Good evening, all. Let's get everyone fired up and queued up here, as the streams are sometimes a little slow. Let's check in. Axanar Confidential on Axanar YouTube is looking good, and on the Axanar YouTube is looking good, but now we got to change over to the Axanar. Hold on a second. We're moving our streams, a lot of our streams, over to the studio YouTube channel, and I just want to check over there and see how we're doing over there. We're doing pretty good. All right, so welcome everyone. Good Friday night. Another week comes to an end. Locked up, locked in. Hopefully no one has decided that they needed to pull out their AR-15 and go storm the Capitol building because you can't handle a little social distancing. Everyone here seems to be in pretty good shape, despite being locked up for a couple of weeks. I've got Mark Largent, look at that, Sci-Fi Nation. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat there. We appreciate that, Sci-Fi. I got Mark Largent and Mark McCrary. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
McCrary, yeah.
McCrary.
Yep.
Who created Prelude to Ax'd-We-Are, which is I call it the animated puppet spoof. What would you call it?
Yeah, I call them animated puppet parodies. Yeah,
animated puppet parodies. Which I love the fact that you have to animate a puppet rather than use a real puppet. I'm like,
I think you know that how much it takes to actually really film something. So if I used real puppets, I'd have to make puppets. I'd have to have sets. I'd have to have lights and cameras and. The trick is that it was always going to be animated, but the puppets are easier to animate. So if I'm just one person, instead of animating the entire body, I'm basically animating this.
Right. Okay. Well, and I'm not sure, it's so funny because I take it for granted that everyone knows about your piece of majestic work. And, but a lot of people don't. So we're going to show it.
Okay.
So everyone can get a glimpse, and then we'll come back and we'll talk some more about it. That'll also give people a chance to roll into the stream. So here we go. We're going to present. Now let me make sure I share the audio.
I think I've seen this before.
Here we go. All right.
1, 2, 3, 4 point and counterpoint. Planet, are you kidding us? A shining example of the conflagration of planets. It represents the pinnacle of human civilization as we know it.
No one would have believed that smelly humans have succeeded in creating something like the conflagration of planets. I mean, if we volcanines were capable of showing surprise, my face would have done this.
Huh? But that feeling wasn't shared by the Clapon Empire, who said, if words were water, we would all make glug-glug noises when we talked. They sent the conflagration of planets a welcome to the neighborhood basket they would never forget. We did not appreciate the Clapon's gift and chose not to send them a thank you note. I personally removed the Clapon commander's name from the stalled fleet Christmas card list and unfriended him on our Spacebook page.
The Clapon commander was a total jerk called Darn the Unaccommodating. He was pure evil.
He was a mystery.
He was a
The Clap-Ons had a word. Hunk Patui. Roughly translated as, we spit on you. And that's exactly what they were doing.
Yes, we spit on the humans often. To them, these planets were places where they could mine minerals. To us, they were sacred. They were where we held our semi-annual spitting contests. Intimate 6 was where I would take hot chicks to make out.
intimate sex. It was nothing but a covered. And don't get me started on that Commander Darn.
We started calling him Darn the Crabhead. Then he destroyed 50 of our ships. We started calling him Darn, he good. Not good as in good. Good as in bad.
It was the Clap-Ons who gave me my nickname, Vesta Vizod.
My nickname? Princess Buttercup. Those clap-on.
They call me Candyman. After 2 years of constant defeats, the conflagration was losing confidence in Starfleet's commander-in-chief.
He was a chicken.
In quick order, Scaredy was removed, and Admiral Makus Remembers was named as his replacement. People tell me they are afraid of the Clap-Ons. Well, I tell you, I do not fear them. I fear snakes and icky spiders. And I wet myself once when a cat jumped out of a trash can in a low-budget horror movie. But I do not fear the Clap-On Empire. What are you doing?
These medals are diamond-shaped and infringe on our copyright.
You can't do that. I'm trying to give a speech here.
Free speech doesn't interest us, pal. I'm gonna need the uniform, too.
Admiral Remember's speech was certainly memorable. Mostly because he was naked. You don't forget something like that. I've tried.
I tell you, today we will make our stand. We will fight for what's right. We will not let huge empires take away the things we hold dear.
Bring in the trucks! Until Remember's speech, I, like everyone else, assumed the conflagration had no chance. Excuse us, buddy. We got a C&D for your ear tips. You've got a what? Ow! Ow!
The first thing Remembers did was begin building a new ship that could take on the Clap-Ons.
It was the Airy class, and I was anxious to see what it could do.
The Clap-On Empire was not prepared for this. No, I won't remove my clothes. It's ours.
The Airy class was the first real warship the Confederation had ever built.
We bought it at auction. But I have the receipt from Sotheby's.
Ax'd-We-Are was at the center of Conflagration space, and it would be the location of the ultimate battle of the 4 Years' War.
Infringement purged. Good luck with your movie.
Well,
My ears are still bleeding.
All right, there we go. Awesome stuff, guys. That is fantastic. I haven't seen it in like 2 years. So it's good to see it again. Mark keeps going in and out.
Yeah, I think he's having some issues. We're trying to find a way to get him on.
No problem. That's no problem.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem, my friend. So, okay. So let's start with, and by the way, I have to say that before, I didn't even know it was coming out until you guys were like finished. And then Jonathan Lane sent it to me and he said, look, he says, keep an open mind. I don't want you to, be upset. And afterwards I was like, upset? How could I possibly be upset? I said, that was just awesome. And he was like, oh, good. Okay. I was worried. I was like,
well, yeah, that's always a fear, is you don't know if somebody has a sense of humor or not, but it was definitely not intended to be mean-spirited.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. It was smart and smart and fun and funny, and it was great. How did it come about?
So I had done Amutt Time, which was a parody of Amok Time, in 2012, and then I did another parody in 2014. So in 2016, I was ready to do another one, and Jonathan Lane had done a write-up on Amutt Time on Fan Film Fridays, or
whatever. We did, right, which he does. He's been doing forever on our website,
right? And so the idea just occurred to me, and I wasn't sure how connected Jonathan was, because I didn't want to step on any toes or anything, but I kind of just threw out the idea in an email, and he loved the idea and thought it was funny. And I thought, well, it's possible that I can figure out a way to do it in a very short period of time, because of the idea of the copyright thing and removing the stuff. I wouldn't have to do space battles or anything, because all of that could just be redacted, and that would just be part of the gag. And then so you're left with mostly just the interview stuff, which is just, the head. You didn't even have to move arms or anything. So the biggest concern was simply that I was terrified that the lawsuit might be settled before I finished it.
Well, we could accommodate you and keep getting our asses.
Yeah. I was really hoping that it could last longer, so that it didn't stop before. But that was my big fear, is because it was 33 days from the initial idea to the finished thing, and
wow.
So it was a lot of working all night and stuff, and I could just see it being like 2 days away, and them announcing that that the lawsuit had been settled. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, this won't work. But of course, my good pal Mark McCrary was the voice of Same Old Tropes?
Yeah,
Same Old Tropes.
Travis Garrett.
Same Old Tropes.
And he also came up with my favorite line in the thing, which was the thing about them. What was the darn?
Darn the Destroyer, and then darn he could.
Darn he could.
Yeah, darn he could.
And so it was astonishing that I was able to get it done so quickly, and then it really it was received very well. I was very pleased with it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Listen, we all love it, and just to remind you told me we could put it on our Blu-ray.
Yes.
Because we definitely.
I think that would be fun. Is to actually to see that with an audience, to show them Prelude to Axanar, and then show them Ax'd-We-Are. But
yeah. Yes.
And one of the things that was fun about it is I had found Prelude to Axanar when it first came out, and had called McCrary and said, "Have you seen this? It's like Star Trek." So when I sat down to start writing the script, there were already all these things that I remembered. I sat down to watch it again to find the thing, but the things like the Klingon phrase and the thing about if words were water and those kind of things always stood out so strongly that you immediately knew those were the things to tag. So yeah, it came together very quickly, and thankfully the lawsuit was settled, but it wasn't settled before I finished.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
So, Alec, can I ask you a question?
yeah.
So, since you had created this and you had worked so closely on it, what was it like for you when you saw your creation through a different perspective or a different lens?
Oh, it was really wonderful. I mean, it really, you realize that you've created something special because it's like, wow, so this small group of talented artists have decided that they want to parody my project.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the highest compliment. Believe me, I was just absolutely, it kind of puts things in perspective. You're like, wow, Axanar really has kind of transcended not transcended Star Trek, but ingratiated itself into the minds and consciousness of Star Trek fans. And let's face it, you either like Axanar or you haven't seen Axanar. That's pretty much the only two groups, because realistic, there's like it's less than 1% of the people who see Axanar like literally don't like it. And you're like, okay, sorry, it's not yours. That's cool.
Yeah.
If that's a pretty good trend. I think we have like 66,000 thumbs up and 1,000 thumbs down. So what's that? Like 1.5% negative?
Yeah.
Dude, movies would kill to have that kind of rating. I mean, look at anything else. Look at any Star Trek thing that CBS puts out and on YouTube.
Yeah.
No, none. We've got an 80. Last time I checked, we had an 86, 87 rating on Amazon. Oscar winners don't get that kind of rating on Amazon. So Axanar has a place in the hearts and minds of Star Trek fans that is really our greatest accomplishment. We've done something that fans love, that fans want to say, this is my Star Trek. So we've got, you guys did a parody of us. Jonathan's doing a fan film of us. Trey McElwain does comics of Axanar. It's like, it's just amazing. It's heartwarming and satisfying, and it makes me feel good. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I was thrilled that you weren't
well, I'll tell you,
immediately having me killed. So that was good.
I canceled the hit really fast. You're frozen, Mark? Oh, I think Mark froze.
Yeah.
Mark is frozen. So, yeah. Mark, you can always join. What does he live in this country?
He's in Kentucky. And,
that explains it. Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, we went through a couple of options to try. Okay, I think he's trying to get back in to get him on, but and then McCrary has actually worked on one of Trey's Axanar comics.
Oh, fantastic!
He illustrated. Well, hopefully he can come back on and tell you the name of it, because they're named after the planets, and I don't think I know the name of it.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
Welcome back, sir. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here. Nice to see everybody.
So now, how do you know Mark?
How do I know?
No, Mark. Mark, that's a double-sided question. Mark, how do you know Mark?
Okay.
Either you can answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we went to school together, and we discovered very quickly that both of us had a pretty strong love for Star Trek. And that was really one of the things that just bound us together. And then we started working on projects and worked on comic books we did together with each other. And Star Trek has been one of the things that's kept us together over the years.
Yeah. one of the first comics that we did in high school together was we decided that they needed a new Star Trek since the cast was getting older. So we came up with Star Trek: The Next Generation. That's literally what we called it.
Oh my gosh! Really?
And and I guess that was in '85. So when they announced the new one, we were like, "Holy cow!" But and it was funny too because
I literally remember you calling. I remember you calling and saying, "This is funny in context here, Mark. I think we need to get a lawyer."
Well, we had sent it to DC Comics. They had the license at the time, but it was an obvious name. But the weird bit of it is we had the idea of an older captain and a younger captain. The older captain gets killed, and the younger captain takes over. The younger captain's his character's name was Jonathan Blake, which is so close to Jonathan Frakes that it was very weird. Not with any idea that they had seen our idea or anything, but it was almost like like we had a fuzzy premonition of what was coming.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. So, how did you get started doing the Star Trek parodies, Mark?
Very long ago, in '96, I think it was. I had one of those early Star Trek websites that were still called homepages back then, and I was finding little things to put on it, and I thought the idea of doing a parody of Amok Time. The initial gag was that in some of the early episodes, Spock was referred to as a Vulcanian instead of a Vulcan. And when I was typing in one of the things, I mistyped it as Vulcanine, and I laughed at the dog joke. And then I realized that there were so many things in Amok Time that you could make dog jokes. And instead of T'Pau, I had T'Poodle and to Pomeranian, and so all these things. So I actually wondered if there was a way to animate it like a Warner Brothers short or something like that. But this was before Flash and the web. That was back when your entire website was 640 by 480 pixels. And so I had worked on it for a while, and I actually went to my first Star Trek convention. I went to Huntsville for, I believe it was the 30th anniversary, and the entire original cast were there. I think it was the last time they were all together on stage. And after 3 solid days of Star Trek, I suddenly decided I'd had too much of Star Trek, and I just put it aside. And I kept coming back to it. McCrary can attest to every other year I found a new way that I was going to do Amutt Time. And so I finally found a 3D program and started working on it. And the whole goal was just to make that darn movie. And so from '96 until I finally finished it in 2012. And then it only took me 3 months. So it was a lot of lead up to it.
Wow. Okay. And what do you do for a living? Like, what is your full-time job, Mark?
I'm a creative manager for a company. I basically deal with all the art we get in. It's kind of a related to advertising.
Okay. Okay. And you, Mark?
I'm a preacher.
Really? Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, so you got a lot of free time.
So
in your
this
hands
is something
now.
I just wanted to say. Well, actually, things have been busier for me now, but this has always been something, just drawing the projects Largent and I've worked on, something to do as an aside, in free time. So it's never been anything that's been able to consume a lot of my time, because a lot of my time's consumed in other areas, but it's been a fun diversion.
Gotcha.
And we never make any money off of it, so it stays a diversion.
So, and now Mark McCrary is in Kentucky. Mark, Largent, where are you?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, okay. Very cool. What part of Dallas?
I I guess it would be North Dallas. I'm in the city of Dallas, but it's actually Denton County, so it's the northern part of Dallas.
So it's like Grapevine north of DFW?
Actually, I would be DFW's kind of mid cities, but I would be north of Dallas proper.
Gotcha.
And like I said, the city just sort of grew big, and so there's parts of Dallas that are outside of Dallas County, and I'm in that
right.
section.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Good. Yeah. No, I was just in Dallas a couple months ago. So yeah,
our other big project that we did recently was another thing that we started a long time ago. I don't know if you've seen it, but we did a Star Trek graphic novel, a fan graphic novel.
Oh, that's what I had put up.
Yeah, I've got. Well, and they're mentioning City on the Edge of Foreclosure, so I'm once again working on another parody, which is taking. But yeah, that's from our fan comic that we actually started in 1991. Mark penciled the entire book, and I'm a little wary on the entire story because it was so long ago, but I think something happened that changed the continuity or something. We had always, after we saw The Undiscovered Country, we assumed with the two-parter with Spock on The Next Generation that Kirk was probably dead in that period. And we didn't think they'd ever tell us that story or anything. So we made our own story about what had happened to Kirk. And it's set in the period between Star Trek and The Next Generation. At this point, Kirk is 100 and something years old. So we were dealing with the characters in a very advanced age. And they, when we knew the 50th anniversary was coming back up, McCrary and I had talked about maybe doing something. And McCrary's brought up, hey, I've still got these pages. We could finish it, put it online.
Yeah, that I've been holding on for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more than 20.
Yeah.
It seems like 91
well,
20 years ago, but
like a lot of fans, we weren't happy with the way his story ended in Generations. And so we just sort of said,
I think you broke up. We actually did this before Generations, but when we knew that the continuity didn't match up anymore, but we thought, we always liked this story, and one of our ideas was to do a sort of loop to you had Gary Mitchell in Where No Man Has Gone Before, and then we wanted to wrap it up with because Kirk would go out of his way to save his friends, and so there was always this sort of sticking point that if there had been a way, he would have saved Gary Mitchell. So that was the brunt of it, and you can find it online. If I think if you go to Facebook, and I want to say it's /Star Trek fan comic, I think let me see if that's actually the.
Send us a link, we'll share it.
mm-hmm.
Okay. Here in the chat. Let's see.
But it's a lot easier to do a fan comic than it is to do a fan film, I would imagine.
Is it this Save What from Heaven?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the tradition of really long Star Trek episode titles, it's called Save What from Heaven is With the Breezes Blown, which I had read it in literature class back in college and thought, that's as long and as flowery as some of those. Is there in truth no beauty in those kind of episodes? And but it's free to read. Obviously, we can't we can't publish it or sell it. It'd be cool to have a printed version, but at least we have the online. And you can see Mark's incredible art, because he did end up mostly redrawing all the pages.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
so, of course, the big challenge was taking these guys. And, of course, we have the benefit now of seeing the way a lot of these guys looked as they got older. Shatner, because of, shall we say, hair issues, he doesn't quite look the same as he did then. So I made the hair more like I would envision Kirk's hair being. But it was a challenge to make these guys all old and yet still, give them some life in the story. So it was a lot of fun working on it. It really was. I'm sure, like you do with Star Trek and your efforts, Alec, it's a labor of love. It means something to you, and it's an effort on your part to feel like you're contributing something to this story.
Absolutely. You're spot on. That's exactly it. I think we all consider it an honor to be adding something with or without CBS's approval, right?
Well, and I don't know.
I think it's a testimony. I was talking to Largent about this one time. Star Trek is very different for me as opposed to Star Wars. I enjoy Star Wars, but I never envisioned other stories going on outside of the movies. But Star Trek was always something that I could sit down very quickly and just imagine adventures going on. It just so captivated my imagination.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's one of we hear a lot of people complaining about why are the fans so hung up on continuity and what's canon or whatever in Star Trek. It's because the people who were making the TV show decided to have that continuity. Especially at that time in a show that wasn't episodic, they didn't need to make the world make sense or for one thing to reference another episode or anything like that. But they took the time to make the world as real as it could be. And I think that's partly why there is so much fan content and stuff. It is a world that you can live in. It's not just a TV show, or it's not just an adventure story. The world, there was an attempt to make it make sense, and we appreciated that.
I absolutely agree. Right? I think we all like the continuity in Star Trek. We like that it's a world that we can imagine other stories in, and some of us play in those. Those stories.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why Axanar resonated. And, you were talking this morning about the new news from CBS about the Pike show. It seems like the new shows just sort of thumb their nose at the fans and what fans expect until with Pike coming in. Yes, they changed some things, but there seems to have been an honoring of what the fans loved. Axanar gave us an image of something that you could envision this happened in the same universe. I watched Discovery. I don't imagine that happening in the same universe as Kirk or Picard, but Axanar did that. And I think Pike, one of the reasons why fans liked Pike and the character of Pike is he was decent. You saw him as a good person. And the look of it, you can watch this and go, okay, I'll squint my eyes, but I can see this fitting in. Whereas no amount of squinting will get me to accept Discovery as fitting into canon.
Right. Yeah. Listen, I always say, I just wish Kurtzman had just done what JJ had done and said, this is an alternate reality. This is just another universe.
Yeah.
Right. If he had done that, I would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, okay, I don't mind that your Klingons look like shit. It's an alternate reality. Like, I don't mind that you're going back in time and retconning stuff. It's an alternate reality. But they're trying to get us to believe that this happened in the same universe TOS happened. And it didn't. It clearly didn't.
Yeah, as if somehow 10 years from this, it all turned into what we know. And that doesn't. And then the idea too, the sort of cop out of saying, here's how it's going to connect to the continuity. Everybody had to pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
That was
somehow everybody forgot.
No, it's not that everyone knows. It's that everything doesn't look like it belongs.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
That's why it doesn't work in continuity. It doesn't belong in continuity. Plus, the Discovery is an abomination of a starship. It's just absolutely.
Oh yeah. There is absolutely nothing in the design of Discovery, from the ship to the show, uniforms, that I think is. I look at the ships and I think there's nothing iconic about any of these ships. You see the original series Enterprise, that design has resonated with people for years because it's iconic. Discovery, the phasers, they do a good job with the phasers.
I agree.
Other than that, everything else just it looks bad, and it's almost like they're trying to force something on us, and it's refreshing, I think, when you see people who genuinely are fans who come back and say, you know what, we can update this a little bit and make it look a little more modern, but still pay homage to the way it was.
Yeah, I think both McCrary and I were really impressed with the Enterprise bridge, because as updated as it was, it still harkened back to what we were in. And I thought it was clever that they could expand it by saying that there were areas behind it.
Yeah, I'm just not that, again, it's like, okay, but that's not the way a bridge looks. That's not the way the Enterprise, that's why it has to be a separate timeline. Because we know what the original series timeline looks like, and it doesn't look like that. Yes, you've made nice nods to the original series bridge. We can all talk about whether it's spot on or not, but it doesn't fit in to what we know as canon. That's why. Just tell me it's an alternate universe, and I'll let you go, and we won't even ever have this conversation again.
Oh yeah.
But they won't do that.
Well, Largent and I, a lot of our conversations revolve around this, and we pretty much, the thing we've said several times was, we will never see, and Alec, you're probably in the same place, except you're doing it. We will never see our Star Trek again. Okay, that's not going to happen. So at some point, I have to decide: can I go along with the Star Trek that they're putting out and just accept it for what it is? Discovery, Picard was okay. I have hopes for Strange New Worlds. I love that show title that they've given us there. But Discovery still is. I'm very much on the fence going to season 3, and that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. We will see. We'll see. I'm not a fan of Discovery. I don't dislike it. I'm just not like Picard. I'm like, yeah, Picard was awesome. I love Picard. I've seen it through twice. I really like Picard. I thought it was good. Discovery, I keep saying, you know what? If it was a science fiction show that wasn't called Star Trek, I would like it a lot more. But you're trying to tell me it's Star Trek, and I'm like, okay, but it doesn't make any sense where you placed it in the timeline. Like, again, if they placed it 20 years after Voyager returned, I'd be like, okay, sure. And they got rid of everything Klingon in season 1 because it looked like shit.
Yeah, I think if they had set it in the future, and therefore continuity is not even an issue anymore. You can, and it's also, Star Trek is about the future, and about moving forward.
And what kills me is season 3 is going to be, way in the future. Why didn't they just start there to begin with? They're saying, oh, now this gives us so much freedom. they could have had that freedom the whole time, but they had to go back and they had to change things in a way that just did not. And again, there's nothing about the ship Discovery that looks good. Nothing.
I agree.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
I agree. It's an awful looking ship. I mean, some of the interiors are okay, but that bridge is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, why is that bridge so big? It's like, and they reused that bridge for the Zhang She or whatever the Riker ship was in Picard.
Yeah.
And you can't really tell, of course, because it's a one shot. But look how far back the guys are on Riker's ship. And it's like, if Riker wants to give an order, he's got to turn around and yell. Like, hey guys, fire phaser,
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Well, you get the idea that they were trying to do a Game of Thrones in Star Trek, and that's the whole Klingon thing, and trying to give it something that would make it, at least in their minds, more layered and more epic, and it just wasn't necessary. The Klingon thing, there's just no way. We accepted, because of all the different theories, genetic manipulation, the difference between the Klingons in the motion picture and the original series. Okay.
Right.
But these just looked so cumbersome as far as the design of the Klingons. Just horrible from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you couldn't understand
the ships. No, well, in the Klingon ships, I couldn't draw one of those for you if my life depended on it.
What does it look like? It's a blob.
I have no idea. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. They were horrendous. It was insulting, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But season
you guys had some really good designs, though.
Well, yeah,
you guys had some really good designs, though, with Axanar.
Thanks. And the issue was we went through a lot of conversations about, so because you start out with, Star Trek is 1966. That was the vision of the future in 1966. So if we're 20 years earlier, what was the vision of the future 20 years earlier? Well, the science fiction vision of the future was like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. So
exactly, yeah.
You can't do that. And you also have to place it between TOS and Enterprise, right? Enterprise and TOS. It happens in there. It's 20 years before TOS, but it's 80 years after Enterprise. So you have to consider those things. And then you have to consider the fact that if you want to be nostalgia, like, you look at Star Trek New Voyages or Star Trek Continues or Star Trek Farragut, right? They're all replicating TOS, like literally shot for shot, prop for prop, costume for costume, music, sets, everything's exact. They're replicating it exactly.
Yeah.
They want to be, more of the same, which is a certain way, an approach. It's an aesthetic. It's an approach. It's like, we're going to replicate everything. Okay, I'm not going to criticize you for that. That's what you wanted to do. That takes a certain level of competence to execute, but it doesn't take any real artistry. It takes construction, but not artistry. It takes you have to have some craftsman skills to build and to replicate, but it doesn't take imagination, right? Again, not to knock those shows, because they look just like the original show, right? Which is what they were going for. So they achieved their goal. That wasn't our goal. Our goal was to say, we take place 20 years before. We want to look different. But we want you to be able to look at it and go, oh, I'm in the original series timeline. Oh, okay, that's a starship. That's a Federation Starfleet starship. And at the same time, we wanted you to go, ooh, that's cool. We didn't want you to go, oh, okay, that's cute. That's quaint. Look, they've got rivets. Look, they've got monitors that look like they're from an old TV. As a matter of fact, Darren Doctorman, who worked on the director's cut of Star Trek: The Motion Picture and as a concept artist in Hollywood, he did a concept drawing for like, okay, here's what I think the bridge should look like. And it looked like what you would think 20 years earlier than the original series, if it was done 20 years earlier, would look. It had like round computer screens, like deck plating, and it looked retro.
Yeah.
Well, you come into two problems. One, it looks more retro than Enterprise. Okay. So that makes no sense. It also doesn't look like the vision of a future we in this day and age have. Now, let's face it. TOS is a 50-year-old vision of the future, right?
Yeah.
And so nothing is going to, nowadays, look, we want the future now. It looks like Picard, right? Or Discovery, right? 50 years ago, the vision of the future looked like Star Trek, the original series. So you're walking a tight rope, and you have to be very careful about the way you approach it, because you can't go into the retro. You can't do that. And at the same time, you can't make it a modern day vision of the future, because that won't work in the time period, which is what Discovery did. So we walk a line where we say we're going to update certain things, touch screens, right? There's no buttons and levers and everything. It's touch screens. I mean, it should be all freaking Minority Report. It should be La Sirena, right?
Yeah.
Holograms, right?
Yeah.
But we know that's not the way TOS is.
Yeah.
But that stretches things too much.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So we can do what we're doing.
Well, and to some degree.
Go ahead.
Oh, to some degree, we wrestled with the same thing when we did Save What from Heaven, because our story was, 50 years after the original series, before the next generation. So we had to come up with some kind of look that we felt like realistically, one could imagine things, it would be a transition. So there were uniforms that had to be designed, ships that had to be designed, but we were very much aware that this needs to, for the person who reads this, we want them to read this and go, I think this could really have happened in the Star Trek universe. I think this really could have been the final story of Captain Kirk.
Yeah. Not like they had suddenly taken a very different turn for 10 years and went completely different than everything else. And of course, back then we had no expectation that period of time, and for the most part, I don't think that period of time has really been fleshed out that much. In the actual Next Generation, they just sort of used the movie costumes without the undershirt.
Yeah, exactly, which looked like shit. That is the one problem with yesterday's Enterprise. The only problem with yesterday's Enterprise, in my mind, is that bad costume choice. Bad. And I'm like, man, and that was Rob Lackman's first season on Next Gen. I'm just like, God, just use the maroons the way they're meant to be used. It's just
at that point. It didn't seem to make sense the way they did it. And obviously it's all production reasons and money and that sort of things. And you kind of give them a pass. But like you said, it wasn't a great job of making us think, well, for some reason they stopped wearing the shirts underneath them, and then that went to the next generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and of course that's the great thing about doing a comic, is you don't have any budgetary restrictions. If you can imagine it, you design it, you're happy with the design, you run with it. So no problem making new uniforms, no problems designing a fleet of ships. You just take the time to draw it and do it because you love it.
Yeah.
McCrary, did you change the ships that much? Those are pretty much the way you had designed it back then, weren't they?
For the most part, but when it came time to ink them, there were some details that I added that were not originally in it. The thing we had going for us when we did it this time was the benefit of the internet. I had resources galore of these characters and the way they looked, and so I could reference those. Whereas 25 years ago, that was not the case.
Yeah, we had a couple of star logs with some pictures.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember. Oh, I love Starlog. I think I still have my first issue floating around that I got off the newsstand. Back when there were newsstands.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so funny because that was where we got our news for anything sci-fi, and it was coming out. That news was already 3 months old by the time we were finding it out.
Of course, we are so spoiled in this day and age, aren't we?
Yeah, but it was a big deal when that came out. Yeah, it's great in a lot of ways. I remember looking at the Starlog that had the first picture of the new Enterprise from Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh, wow.
I remember looking at that and I just thought that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is incredible looking.
Yeah. No, listen, it was just a different time, wasn't it? It was just, you know, and nowadays it's just, you know, instantaneous. I mean, we all know about the Pike series now. Normally, like you said, it'd be a month, it'd be 2 months.
Yeah. And it would come about because it was officially released, not Starlog wasn't publishing leaks. They were getting press releases and that sort of thing. So now somebody can step out with their phone and not only tell us what's happening, but have pictures of it or video or anything. So it's hard to keep anything secret anymore.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Although
it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Why is it? Because people are passionate about this.
Yeah.
People, when it comes to Star Trek, this for many of us holds a special place in our hearts. It was something that on Saturday nights at 6 o'clock, it took me literally to a different place. And I remember just being enraptured when I watched it week after week. The other shows meant a lot to me, but the original series, from a nostalgic standpoint, when Kirk stepped onto the bridge, I mean, those scenes showed me he was in command and he was going to do what needed to be done. And boy, that shaped me in a lot of ways, just watching that show. And that's why it means a lot to me. That's why I like doing stuff.
Well, and McCrary and I have been talking, we really like the way the actor did Pike in the second season of Discovery. And the biggest part, I think, is that he was noble, he was competent, and you felt like he could save the day. There wasn't, whatever other aspects of his character, that was what came through. And I think Kirk had that to some extent. And the better captains on the series do is that that you can count on them. They're not just the captain. You look to them to lead. And I thought it was astonishing how much he was able to embody that.
Yeah.
So hopefully the new show will be something we can get into again. It would be nice to watch Star Trek without all the asterisks at the end of it.
Yeah.
I liked it, but
yeah. Well, listen, guys. In my mind, that was Picard, right? For me, I was like, okay, I love Picard. That was great. That was great Star Trek, right? And some people have an issue with how dark it was, or, well, that's not the Picard I remember. Yes, that's the whole point. It's not the Picard you remember.
Yeah.
Right? He lost. He got his ass kicked at Starfleet headquarters. Millions of people died. He carries that around. Yeah. Right? It's a redemption story.
That's right. And ultimately, that's what you want out of Star Trek. It's not always where it is at the moment, but where will it take you? The things I didn't like about the Picard, the La Sirena, design-wise, I still have a problem with the designers of the new shows. But if I put that aside, Picard bringing Patrick Stewart in, I can still feel like this is a continuation of the show that I knew. Yeah. All of us could sit back and say, if I were in charge of this, I would have done this differently. But I'm not at the end of the day. And so I found it very entertaining. I enjoyed it for the most part. We'll see what happens with Strange New Worlds. I will agree with Largent. I think I want to see a future where people are good. And people are trying to do good. They make mistakes, but they're trying to do good. There are no characters in Discovery that I find likable. None. Pike, I did find likable. I found Kirk likable. Loved Cisco. I loved Avery Brooks as Cisco. I mean, they sentimentally, Star Trek, the original series was my favorite, but as far as just watching it, Deep Space Nine and Cisco is probably my favorite captain.
I'm with you.
What they did with him, what they did with he and his son, I loved that story that they did, and how the characters, they were just likable characters. And I watched Discovery until Pike came along, and suddenly I go, I like this character.
Yeah. Well, and you can watch the pilot of Deep Space Nine, and those are those characters from the beginning. There isn't suddenly a point where they radically changed into something else. You can see the characters. They were well defined and everything. Yeah, I think Deep Space Nine didn't get as much love as it should. It did from us. We always thought it was.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
New ones.
It's my favorite show. Yeah. I'm with you. Well, gentlemen, listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for all your work and effort on Prelude to Ax'd-We-Are. We love having it as part of the extended Axanar universe. And maybe once we release Axanar, you'll savage us again.
Maybe.
All right.
But I'll take my time.
Alec, it's great meeting you.
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much, my friends. It's great having you guys on board. We will look forward to chatting with you more in the future, and please be safe, be healthy, and Mark, take care of your flock, and Mark Largent, get back to work.
Yeah, I've got a lot to do.
God bless.
It's great talking to you, though.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow at 11 a.m. for Weekend Brunch with Axanar. In the meantime, as always, live long and prosper.